Audience, hello, how's it going? Glad y'all could be here.
Yes, thank you.
Coach Wells, hello. All right, I call this meeting of the Pearland Independent School District Board of Trustees to order on February 11th, 2020 at 3:37,
237.
2:37, excuse me, my glasses aren't. Apologize, thank you, Ms. Decker. Let the record show that there is a quorum of board members present, that this meeting has been duly called and notice of the meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Governance Code, Chapter 551. Let the record show that trustees Carbone, Decker, Floyd, and Lance Botkin are present. The Board of Trustees of the Pearland Independent School District will now go convene into closed meeting to discuss the following items posted on our agenda in the evening as allowed in Title V, Chapter 551, Texas Governance Code and Education Code. The superintendent will present to the board's consideration and discussion the following matters: 551, 071, 072, 074, 075, 076, 082, 083, 084. No voting will take place in the closed meeting. Any action the board wishes to take as a result of the discussion is closed session and will take place after the board reconvenes in the open meeting. It is now 2:38, and we'll go into closed session.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the board will reconvene in open session at 5:04. No action was taken on any discussion in executive session. This is the portion of the board where the board receives input from patrons. Each person who addresses the board will have 3 minutes to speak on his or her issue. And I'm showing that we have 1 speaker today, so there's no need to talk about any time restrictions. Ms. Vidya, the floor is yours.
What's last name, Joe?
Vidya, would you please pronounce your last name for me?
That would be Muthupillai.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Muthupillai, Muthupillai.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, you can thank my dad for that one. He's
Appreciate it, sir. Thank you very much.
My substitutes appreciate it as well.
All right, the floor is yours.
So I wanted to come back and say hello. I haven't been here for 2 months. December's finals and January is a bad month. So with that, I wanted to talk to you guys about a couple things. As we all know, it's election season. So for those of you who are running, best of luck. I wanted to talk about the elections just because it's always a really good time to get public input because people are naturally willing to participate whenever the time comes for local elections. So I just wanted to remind the board how important it is to just have those town halls, especially for everyone. I think this is a great opportunity to really solicit the opinions of our entire community as a whole. And I would really look forward to actually having a student-led town hall so that the students of Pearland can put in their voices because not all of us can vote. And so given that, I believe that it will influence the voices and the votes of many of their parents. And so I look forward to hearing you guys discuss that. As well, I'd also like to bring up the census really quick. As we all know, 2020 is a very important time because the census gives us a lot of money as a district, a lot of resource allocations. We need to know how many people are in our district so we can plan for it properly. So I'd like to draw this board's attention towards funneling just a little bit of resources into census education, into doing workshops so that we can get an accurate count of the people in our district. As a student, it's a really big priority for me because I want to know how many people my resources are being shared with. And as the board and as a district that pretty much touches almost every person in this district, I would argue that's even more influential than the city of Pearland itself, simply because it's the largest employer. We influence every single student that comes through this district, every teacher, every parent of those students. I would humbly ask this board to put more resources into actively pushing the census and making sure that our people are counted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time, as always. Okay, that will complete public comment. The board will now adjourn back into closed session.
Charles, you may want to mention that we have had additional board members come since executive session. I don't think that's been announced yet.
Okay, good deal. So since executive session, trustees Gooden and Barry have joined, and Murphy have joined us. So we're all here now. All right. Okay, at 5:07, the board will go back into a closed session. We're going to have our regularly scheduled executive session, complete the superintendent's evaluation, and we'll be right back out. Thank you. 5:07. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we will reconvene in open session at 6:27 p.m. No actions were taken on the discussion in executive session. Are there any motions?
I will make a motion. I move that we accept and approve the superintendent's recommendation for employment of personnel as presented.
Second.
There's a motion, Carbone, second, Decker. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 7-0. We will go directly into our opening comments and pledges by trustee Carbone.
Yes, sir. So I'll just keep it short and sweet. I just wanted to tell you guys all thank you for being here tonight. Really appreciate the work that you all do here in Pearland ISD, and genuinely from the heart, just thanks.
All right.
So we'll start with the pledge of the American flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. And if you'll bow with me for a moment of prayer. Father God, I just thank you so much for the opportunity to come before you tonight. I just ask that you give us wisdom and guidance to keep the main thing, the students, teachers, administration, staff of Pearland ISD, that we would make decisions that are honoring and pleasing to you. And I just thank you for this time to gather in your name. In your name we pray. Amen.
All right, at 6:29, we'll go directly into board recognition.
Good evening. Pearland ISD is home to some of the most talented students in the state of Texas, and now comes the time that we love recognizing them for their achievements. Tonight, we're going to highlight 3 students who beelined to the top 3 spots in our district-wide spelling bee. From Massey Ranch Elementary, placing 3rd, we have Brooke Williams. There we go. You got it, Mom? Thank you. Good job. Placing 2nd in our district spelling bee, from Pearland Junior High East, Shidinma Kanu. Big smile. Congratulations. And finally, taking the top honors in our Pearland ISD spelling bee, and will represent the district at the Houston Public Spelling Bee on February 29th, qualifying for the Scripps National Spelling Bee, we hope, is from Barry Miller Junior High, Huntao Jen. Good job, babe. Yes, and the winning word was erstwhile. Stay in the middle, we got around it.
Can't even say the word.
Erstwhile. Congratulations to all of our students and good luck.
Like I said, Larry Parker's a phonetic genius. You know that?
That's because he's Captain
He knows all kind of crazy words. Useless words. He gets up at 3 in the morning. He looks in the dictionary. He's Captain America, for God's sake.
All right, the next item we will consider is our public hearing for the 2018-2019 Texas Academics Performance Report, also called the TAPR. And at 6:33, I will open the public hearing. Mrs. Akers, Ms. Akers, the floor is yours. Thank you. How are you?
Hi, I'm wonderful, thank you. I've had a long day, but I understand you have too, so, and it's really hard to follow all this cuteness, and I'm very glad I don't have to spell, so, very good. So this is our annual public hearing of the performance of our students in our district, and none of this information is new. It is all information that I've presented to you previously this year at various board meetings, but a statutory requirement that we have a public hearing. And as always, the news is always good about our students. You've had the opportunity to review the report, so I will go through it rather quickly. But if you have any questions, please let me know at the end. So the Texas Academic Performance Report is posted online. It is now in an online format and much more detailed than it's ever been before. The performance is disaggregated by student groups, including ethnicity and socioeconomic, and the report is very comprehensive, reporting on programs, teachers, students, and demographics. There are 7 sections to the report, and you can find this, and this will also be available at the district office for anyone in the public who would like to come in and look at it. And these are the sections in that report. The cover page of the report includes our accountability rating. We, this year, were rated or in 2018-2019, had a 93 rating, which translated to a letter grade of B. All of our campuses met standard, and our district met all of the requirements for our special education determination status. All of the STAR data is also included in the TAPR, and I would like to make sure that you're aware the third bullet point is very important because you may wonder where those numbers are coming from. As you know, we have multiple administrations of STAR, and so what is included is the 2018 summer end of course exams, the December retest on the 2018 end of course exams, and then all of the spring data. And as you know, the 5th and 8th graders have 3 opportunities to pass STAR due to SSI requirements. So their first administration in April and their second administration in May are what is included on that report. So it's not what follows our calendar year, and it's important to know where that accumulation of data is coming from. We also have information on programs, which we'll talk about, attendance, graduation, and dropout rates, as well as our college, career, and military readiness information. So we'll review that very quickly as well. On section 1 of the TAPR, it gives us information about our student enrollment and our graduates, keeping in mind that anything for graduates is from 2018, so it's always a year behind. And then also our student enrollment by program, which I thought you would find interesting to see the number of students. And I've got a future slide that will show you how that has increased over the last 10 years, which I think is most important. I provided a comprehensive slide here looking at grades 3 through 8 for our reading performance, looking at the approaches grade level. And on this slide, you can see information for the state, the region, and our district. Our district is represented by the dark blue bar on the right, and as you can see, we outperformed both the region and the state. Likewise, 3 through 8 mathematics are included on this slide, and again, Pearland was substantially higher in many of the categories, but outperforming in every grade level. Students take a science STAR examination in grades 5 and grades 8. Again, Pearland reporting above the district or the region and the state. And then in grade 8, they take a social studies exam, which is their first entrance into taking a STAR examination on social studies. But we were substantially above. STAR writing, we were above. That is administered in grades 4 and 7. However, be aware in the next year, the writing examination will be going away as a standalone exam, and it will be combined with the reading exam. So it'll be an ELA, English Language Arts exam, going forward after this year. And then we have 5 subjects tested at end of course, and our students at the high school level also continue to outperform those in surrounding areas. And then I wanted to provide you a comprehensive slide with all of our subject areas, all grade levels 3 through end of course, so that you could see cumulatively how our students and how our district are doing. Also, this was a really great slide I wanted to include for you, and good information showing a breakdown by demographics and programs. And I think it's important to note that all of our minority populations, all of our demographics by themselves performed higher than the all student category throughout the entire state. So I think that speaks volumes to meeting the needs of all of our various students. And then one of the newest and most important components of the TAPR to really pay attention to is the progress domain. If you remember in accountability, domain 2 is progress. And our goal is for every student in Pearland ISD to show progress. And where progress goes, so does your district. So we're doing very well in the area of progress as measured and compared to students across the state. And progress is only measured, by the way, in reading and mathematics, because those are the examinations administered each year. This is our 5th grade progress, our 6th grade progress, 7th grade. Now, I do want to bring your attention to the grade 7 math, because you see that the Pearland bar is slightly below, and that may have raised a flag for you. But remember that this includes our students who are in advanced math. So they actually skip a grade level. So we don't have, our students that are in 6th and 7th grade advanced math don't take some of the STAR exams. They skip because they're being taught TEKS for the next year. So it doesn't, the 7th grade growth is not really a true measure of where our 7th graders are. That data is skewed because of advanced math. Grade 8, progress, and then end of course progress. Again, only being measured in reading and math, so you only have the opportunity to measure progress in Algebra 1 as compared to 8th grade math, and English 2 as compared to English 1 the prior year. Progress of our prior year non-proficient students would be those students who the year prior were not successful on the STAR examination, and then this year they were successful. So that speaks volumes to our remediation and our response to intervention programs. The bilingual education, this is becoming more and more an important component, especially within our accountability. This year in accountability in Domain 3 under federal accountability was the first year that TELPES results, or the academic performance and STAR performance of our bilingual students, is measured in its own category. And it's 10% of that accountability calculation for Domain 3. And as our population of bilingual continues to increase, we'll want to pay more attention as well to that program. Looking at our dropout rate, I think that's incredibly impressive and speaks volumes to Ms. Weimer and her team and the team of people we have here at Pearland. We really go out and find those students who are struggling to graduate and offer them opportunities and ways to be successful in obtaining their high school diploma. Looking at the 4-year longitudinal rate, the graduation rate as compared to the state and region is almost 10% higher. The percentage you see are the students who get a GED as opposed to a high school diploma, but that number is lower for us because we have more students receiving a diploma. Students who continue high school, who perhaps are receiving special education services and stay beyond that 4-year period, and then the percentage of students who are actually dropped out that we cannot account for in terms of getting a GED. College-ready graduates, that is measured by our CCMR components, which we see in Domain 1 of accountability for our high school students. They look at the information in terms of English and math, and then both subjects for the TSI. So the Texas Success Initiative is an examination that many colleges are now requiring for placement for students in even the four-year universities. And so I think we're looking at offering more opportunities, perhaps to almost all students, to be able to take the TSI. And so that's an important component and something we'll want to look at in terms of funding. Our dual credit students are more college ready, perform higher than those across the state. AP, substantially higher. And then the number of students that are demonstrating college readiness with an associate's degree. This slide also, I would like to point out, the data is somewhat skewed, and I had to include it in here for statutory purposes. But it is skewed because what TEA found was many districts last year simply took all of their students who didn't have a CCMR indicator in terms of TSI or AP scores or SAT scores, and they just coded everyone military. And so TEA there were several districts across the state that had 80% of their population coded as entering the military, which bumped their accountability ratings by about 2 grades. And so TEA is putting in measures and policies now to ensure that file is going to come in the future from the Department of Defense so that districts are accurately recording that.
The other thing I'd add there, Ellen, is that this is old data from 16, 17 year.
Yes.
We've done a lot better job of tracking kids. That number is going to go way up, basically.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then this is our college and career ready students looking at industry certifications, IEPs, and the workforce ready, which involves our special education students. And CTE coherent sequence is another indicator that is going away as well. Coherent sequence is changing in terms of our CTE classes, so we'll fill you in on that as that becomes available next year. These are the advanced placement results for students in grades 11 and 12. That is all that's reported on the TAPR, looking at English, math, science, and social studies. And of course, our advanced academics program does a beautiful job in preparing our students for those examinations. Average SAT scores as compared to the state, looking at all subjects, and then in particular English and math. ACT scores, looking at all subjects, English, math, and science. And then advanced dual credit course completion. So looking at our highlights from the TAPR report, I think what's very impressive is that our scores for grades 3 through 8 and EOC continue to be above both districts surrounding us in the region as well as the state. Again, that growth component, especially important, and we're seeing continued growth and scoring above the state in terms of our students growing from one year to the next and having 1 year's worth of growth from one grade level to the next. And then continued enrollment in our AP and dual credit courses. Areas of concern, writing continues to be a concern, but how we're doing response to intervention and remediating that will change as that STAR examination evolves into the new examination. So curriculum is working very closely with that. We want to continue to increase our percentage of students that are graduating college and career ready. And I know one of the big focuses is trying to increase the number of students who are graduating with an associate's degree as a high school graduate. This is our student enrollment by program, and I gave you this information over the last 6 years so that you could see the changes in those programs. Specifically, the bilingual program is continuing to increase. All of the programs are increasing across the board throughout the year. Looking at our student enrollment, this is a breakdown looking at 10 years ago versus today, just so that you could see the change in our student demographics. I think most notable is the increase in economically disadvantaged students. So those students who may come to us with greater needs, and I think that's especially important information as we move into that full year or all-day pre-K next year. It'll be interesting to see what those numbers look like with that next year. And this is just a visual representation of those graphics for you. Class size averages by grade and subject. And again, this is one of those things that's reported, but has a lot of variables because you have a lot of schools that are across this is all high schools, charter schools, public schools, schools that are specialty schools, STEM schools, fine arts schools. So class sizes are really on both ends of the spectrum here. And so looking at that state average, I don't see great areas of concern, feeling like Pearland is substantially higher, although there are a few areas that might be notable. Looking at our teacher demographics, our turnover rate for the district for teachers was at 12.4%, whereas the statewide rate for turnover was at 16%. And we do tend to have teachers with more experience stay with our district. I think most employees who come here and teach want to stay. And then average teacher salary, I know this is yes, sir.
Go back a slide, please.
Yes, sir.
On the turnover rate for teachers in our district, is that included that they're going to another district and or getting out of teaching?
So it doesn't it doesn't include retiring.
I'm talking about get out of teaching, just go ahead.
If they leave, they leave. You have to count
And then
turnover.
that
Right.
leads me to the state. Is the state at 16 point, I guess, 0, is that teachers getting out or just moving from district to district? Okay. Okay. But it's inclusive if they're leaving, not teaching no more, and, if they're okay, thank you.
Okay, and then the next slide is average teacher salary. I know that continues to be a topic as we look to remain competitive in our area.
Ellen, let me just add something there.
Yes.
I think this slide can be misleading because although we look good in that slide, the truth is we are competing with the people in the Houston area, not with the state. This average takes into account the most rural districts in the whole state, and that's not the proper comparison for us. We've got to attract people in this area of Houston.
Yes, and the regional number is not available on the TAPR for that particular slide. Section 2 of the TAPR looks at financial information. Very quickly, this is our revenue and expenditure per student in Pearland versus per student in the state. Program expenditures, I pulled the major programs that we look at. And looking at, again, I don't have regional numbers on this, but the state versus our district and where and which programs our expenditures are going. Section 3 is our accreditation status, and as a district, we had an A Superior First rating. We are an accredited district. And then campus performance objectives are included in Section 4. This is something that you've already approved as a board for our campuses. We essentially, on these reports, I have a little corner down there so you can remember what they look like, and they're also included in the board cover sheet for you, the link to them. But we look at where campuses are performing, for example, at 90%, and we look at how can we get them to 100% over a 5-year period. And so it's a mathematical calculation in establishing those performance objectives. Required statutorily is a report on violent and criminal incidents.
Hold on there.
Oh, yes.
Crystal, I sent myself and everybody else on a wild goose chase today. What I found out at the very end of the day, 30 minutes before the meeting, is we have simply put the wrong link on that report, and that there is last year's report to match this year's report. So I think they have fixed that, Nyla, or almost. Right? Okay. Yes.
Ellen did tell us that the report that was in the link was correct. It just was not the report that we saw last year. So now the report has both copies.
Okay.
The report has changed from last year. TEA has changed that report and what it looks like. Internally, we can pull that information out of On Data Suite and give you a particular report on the violent and criminal incidents, as well as a complete discipline report, if that's something you are looking at. One of the things that's important to note is on that link and on the report that TEA generates, there's a column called expulsions, which I know had been a question. And on the TEA report, expulsions, it's rather complicated to read the report. And expulsions on there are talking about students who are banned from the district forever, essentially. We don't do that in Pearland ISD. We expel children to JJAP.
Well, the other thing I remember from that particular one, if I'm following you, is that it only recorded expulsions for what TEA termed violence.
Yes.
And so that would not include terroristic threats and other things that we've encountered.
Well, it's interesting because the new TEA report doesn't have, it only has categorical data based on what disciplinary actions we've taken. It doesn't actually describe, like the second one you sent, and I appreciate that information, on the criminal incidents that were reported within our district.
Yes, and I have that report, and Dr. Kelly can send that to you. I apologize, I was on jury duty
it's
today
okay. No worries.
and wasn't here to pull that immediately for you, and I apologize. But we do.
Can all of that data be pulled from the TEA website independently?
No, and I'll tell you why for us. When you have small populations, just like on STAR, when you're looking at demographics, anytime, and we have very small numbers in terms of criminal and violent. In looking at that report, that data is masked for our district because the populations are so small. You would be living
You
in the
would be able
community. If
to
you knew
go.
Ellen Akers had been expelled, you would know that one of those two kids on there was Ellen. So they do mask, our numbers are too small to report on that TEA website. So internally, we can pull that for you by campus.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank
Okay.
you. Much appreciated.
My pleasure. And then another part, Section 6 of our TAPA report just simply looks at tracking students in post-secondary institutions afterwards. This is the Texas Higher Education Board website, and it's newly redesigned this year. I put a little snippet of a screenshot just for some information that you can pull up for our district, high school to college. And it really is the most, they have some very comprehensive tracking in place now. So we're starting to get some very accurate data from that. So this is, again, looking at 2017, 18 information because it's always behind and it's really just in the last year starting to put measures in place that the legislature is required to track that information. So
You know, for our school district, I've never put too much value in that report
No.
because all the kids that go on to any school outside of Texas are not
Are not
reported.
that is correct. They can only track in-state and public institutions as well. And then there is a glossary that's included for you, a link to that, because there are a lot of terms in the TAPA report that, and a lot of acronyms very specific to education. So the report will be available here at the district within 1 week of this meeting and available for anyone in the public to view and certainly also available for you.
I think the one thing we always talk about this time is tracking the number of students that go to these public institutions that are in remedial type classes. That would be a good indicator of what level our students are leaving our campuses. So I don't know if that's available or being talked about or discussed as being
That's
able
not
to track.
available, but that's where that TSI really is important and offering that to more students because the TSI is the placement report that tells whether a student is college ready for freshman level algebra and freshman level 1301 English. And if they're not, it tells I think there are 3 levels below that a student could be placed in a remedial college course. And so that TSI, that is exactly what it's designed to do. So as we look at our results and dig into that, and if we can offer that to more of our students, we can not only increase our CCMR data for accountability, but we can get more information to help us help students be ready for college. So that's really our ticket for that information. Any other questions?
I have a few.
Sure.
The reading for special education looks like in grades 3, 4, and 5 that we saw decreases sort of across the board for those grade levels. Is there any indication of what's underneath that, or
Dr. Nixon, can you help?
I don't know, that's kind of specific. Maybe you can email me later and we can, or,
It's an area of concern.
okay.
It's an area that we need to work on.
Come on. Yes, that's right.
It is an area that we continue to monitor. That's an area of difficulty for our students. So I'm working with Dr. Watson, with the CNI specialist, to try to identify some strategies that target that population in particular.
Are we seeing changes in the benchmarks at first and second grade that are kind of showing us that we're making progress in those areas as we get to that third grade year?
There's a lot of work in a program that's called an LLI. It's a reading program that is very prescriptive, so that it allows for that opportunity to take really good kind of diagnostic notes and check their progress. So I think we have that piece in place to try to catch those early reading difficulties. What happens is, once they're identified special ed, as you know, specific learning disabilities in basic reading or reading comprehension, the difficulty then becomes to close that gap, because we know that they're not going to make that same progress as our typical general ed student. And so how do we address their needs? We focus a lot on progress, like Ms. Akers talked about. But still, that meeting that passing standard, or that approaches grade level, is an area of difficulty for our kiddos.
Okay, thank you. And then on the the count of students, I guess, Dr. Kelly, more for you, it looks like we are seeing a trend of like the ninth grade students is at 1,800 right about now, and that's kind of our big bubble that we've been following through the middle schools or whatever. So we've gotten them to high school where we have a little bit more space and that sort of thing. But I was wondering, over time, is there usually an increase in the enrollment as students progress in years?
Yes, there is. And so I think that accounts for part of it. And then the other part of it is Texas-wide demographics, where smaller classes are coming in at the kindergarten first and second level.
So do we typically, I'm seeing an average of about 1,500 at the second and third grade levels right now. Do we expect those to grow as the years progress, or we expect that,
Yeah,
what's
I
been
think
the
there'll
trends
be,
over
yeah,
years?
I think there'll be some growth, but not like the old days, not the large amounts of growth, but more small incremental growth. And of course, Georgiani, myself, and others are looking at that all the time to see if we see a trend. But right now, we worry most about the lower class levels
Being
coming in.
smaller.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think another just important note to that is that data is recorded on Snapshot Day, which is the last Friday of October. And so any changes we had for the rest of the year is not included in that data. They have to pick basically a cutoff date where student information is reported. So a student may have been here on that day but moved out. They're still reporting for us. But likewise, you always have a big influx of new students that semester, and those students would not be recorded in that data.
Got it. And then the only other oddity that I saw or noticed or didn't know is that it looks like we only have 19 librarians, but 23 campuses. Is that right?
That probably means that the other 4 are the library aides at this point in time.
Okay, so that they're
Yeah.
taking responsibility for the librarians. I got it. Okay, makes sense. Thank
Okay.
you.
What was the report, you said on TEA, I just jotted some notes. As you went on, I couldn't remember what the report that you were gonna pull that you couldn't, what was that? Was that a discipline report? No?
That was the-
Violent and criminal acts.
Okay, so,
So it is a part of the disciplinary report. So the most severe code, and it's based on coding. And so I have that ready. Dr. Kelly can send that to you.
I'm just curious about, like discipline and as we go and we talked about it at different times about our kids coming to school and how we're dealing with discipline and things like that. It's always good to see that data of what they're getting in trouble for, I guess, if you will. But that's only violent crimes, you said, or?
We actually can pull all of the discipline reports out of a program that we have internally that Dr. Kelly can share that information with you.
That'd be interesting.
I think I accidentally shared a bunch of it today. I sent you like 2 other reports, which weren't the right ones, but I will send the right one to them. But
It was
had a lot of
very
good stuff in
informative,
it.
yeah.
That's what I say, I'd like to see
Right.
that.
And I
flow
think
on.
part of this statutory reporting has to do with the violence that we've seen in schools. And so the legislature is asking specifically for those most serious acts to be reported. Anything else?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. So on slide 29, when we talk about program expenditures, this always catches my eye because we talked about this, I think, in one of our strategic plans maybe 2 to 3 years ago. But can you tell me or educate me on, we look at gifted and talented and we spend 3 times the amount of program expenditures, 3 times what the state normally spends, but bilingual, we spend half. Is there a correlation on why we spend much less on bilingual? Is it correlated to the number of students, or why is the state average so much higher? Is it
Sean,
due to population
think-
demographics, or?
Yeah, I'm probably better to answer that. Our bilingual population, and it's somewhere in these reports, is about half of what, percentage-wise, half of what the state's average for the percentage of kids that are in bilingual education. So that's, we're going to spend less because now we still spend fairly good at the in the dual language program because there's additional costs for that. With GT, I don't remember off the top of my head what the state percentage is, but we're at 10%. Until this last funding cycle, the state only provided funding for 5%. They gave a certain amount for 5% of your population identified as GT. That all went away with the last legislative session. They just basically said, it's your money, you decide how you want to do it. So there's no more separate GT allocation. But of course, with our GT services, particularly the GT Academy, you're going to see additional expense there.
Okay. I just want to make sure, I assume that it was, with the large state population of possibly bilingual, that the correlation was due to the demographics of our district.
Yes, sir.
And we'll see an increase, I'm sure, in the pre-kindergarten category next year.
Yes.
Or
Absolutely.
2
Yes.
years.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else?
All right.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you, Ms. Akers. We will close the public hearing at 7:04 p.m. Next item will be, new business will be on the consent agenda, which is presented to you as items 1 through 9. Is there any item that a trustee would like to pull from the consent for discussion?
Mr. Board President, I move that we approve the consent, we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second. Thank you, sir. There's a motion by Floyd, second by Barry. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Next item under the regular agenda is consideration to approve the 2020-2021 district calendar.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, per your guidance to us over the last few years, part of our marching orders was to finish the school year before Memorial Day. You'll see that has been accomplished. I think the large calendar committee that weighed in on this would simply say this is a calendar extremely similar to this year's calendar. I'd be glad to answer any questions. Ms. Serrano also heads up that committee and can also help as needed.
All right, were there any questions for Mrs. Serrano? Or Dr. Kelly?
I just want to ask Dr. Kelly, since we changed the calendar last year, what was the feedback from staff, and was there any, because it was a big change from the year before, last year. Have you heard any feedback, or what did the committee say, or?
The committee really liked it. The parents and the teachers, the campus staff, really liked starting in the middle of the week in August. We used to start at the very, beginning of the week on a Monday. We're starting in the middle, Wednesday, Thursday. They really like that. The campuses really like that because it gets the kids, the opportunity to, acclimate themselves to a new school, to a new grade level. And so they
Like a training,
do
like
all
a
that
probationary kind of,
Yes.
like for 3 days, just the procedures and stuff, right?
Getting to know the campus, getting to know the schools, and all that.
Yes, Mr. Ronald, if you don't mind coming to the microphone, thank you. Yeah. No, yeah, we can hear you, but it makes it hard on Vic to do the, yeah. Oh, Vic will be on my case later about, hey, man, come on.
Yeah, so the campuses really liked it. It gives them an opportunity to acclimate kids to the new rules of that grade or that campus. They go over the dress code, they go over rules, all of that. They also do a lot of social interaction activities with the teachers, building relationships with the homeroom, the teachers. So that's that for that social, emotional side. We do a lot of activities on those days also.
What was the feedback from the parents on starting in the middle of the week?
They liked it.
They liked it as
They
well?
liked it,
Okay.
yes. The parents on the committee really, really liked it.
What are the bad weather days?
I'm sorry?
The bad weather days?
We don't have to, thank you, that's a very good question. We don't have to identify bad weather days if we build the number of minutes that include those 2 bad weather days.
Okay, and we're doing that.
And we're doing that, yes, sir. I mean, yes, ma'am. I was looking at Dr. Kelly.
Okay, it's all good.
Are the teachers, when we change the calendar, are they taking advantage of the, I call them flex days, or is that incorporated, like if they go to a training in the summertime?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And
Yes.
tell me where the,
Those are the work days.
okay, so if a teacher doesn't get time in the summertime, then they were expected to be on campus, correct?
Right. Yes, the flex day procedures are still part of our system, part of our district.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, is there a motion?
Make a motion, we approve the 2019, 2020 to 2021 district calendar as presented.
Second.
There's a motion, Botkin, second, Carbone. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much, Mr. Serrano, and to your committee. All right, members, the next 2 items are 2 things that were placed on the agenda by me for your consideration. The first is the establishment of a yearly Board of Trustees calendar and suggestion for board committee structure. And Doc, I guess I'll just go ahead and start. Okay. All right. All right. In our board self-evaluation, there were several things that TASB suggests that you do, and one of those things was to establish a 12-month calendar of the board activities. Not so much our special visits to schools, but to the sort of regulatory ministerial things that we need to do, plus any major briefings on major management systems for the district. So what I did is I went back through a couple years of agendas and pulled out some of the things that we do on a yearly basis. And then looking through my documentation, I had a calendar that Mrs. Dawson had done at some point in time. I have no idea how I got it, but I'm very thankful that I ended up with it because I was able to check what I had put together, and it seemed to be pretty comprehensive. So this item will satisfy several of the criteria that are on the board self-evaluation tool, specifically 1.2B and 8.1A. Basically says we have a calendar and everybody has it, so everybody's aware what's supposed to be going on month to month. There are 3 items that are not on the calendar that we're going to be working with administration to schedule. One is the Safety and Security Committee meetings, and those are, was I right about that committee meeting 4 times a year? Is it 3 or 4?
I think the requirement is 3, but we're going to meet at least 4 as a district.
Okay, and those meetings are set as time comes around. You know, there's a lot of people scheduled that has to be accommodated. The second thing are the student advocacy group meetings. Those meetings are scheduled by committee. They don't show up here. And then the last thing are the strategic plan updates. And we'll be working with the administration to get a reasonable reporting interval for our new strategic plan. But other than that, that is the calendar. The second thing are a set of committees. One being advocacy, the second being calendar, the third being student advisory, and the fourth being security, safety and security. Safety and security, that committee, the board president, whoever that may be, is required to be a part of that. It was required to attend those meetings, and a second trustee at the appointment of the board. What I'm proposing here is that we formalize that responsibility by making those two trustees, whoever they may be, year to year, as our safety and security committee. The same thing with the student advisory committee. Trustees Barry, Floyd, and Carbone currently meet with the student advisory group, so we want to formalize that relationship and to show our commitment to hearing and acting upon student input. That's worked out very well so far. The calendar committee is a proposal, and that would have, the job for that would be developing this calendar in the future years. And for the advocacy committee, there was another criteria, or two other criteria, that were on the board self-evaluation tool that we all seem very enthusiastic to fulfill, that were about developing an active plan for the boards, basically our presence in the community, right? Coming up with what our local advocacy plan would be and generating support for the district, its vision, its goals, with the patrons, business community, and other organizations in the area. That is kind of an overall of what this item is and why this item is proposed. And I am looking for an approval. I'm requesting an approval pending your discussion of the actual calendar, and then just want your overall input on the establishment of these four committees.
Just to be clear, two of those committees are already
Yeah, we're already
in
functioning that way,
existence,
right? But
So
it's
we
just that,
need to formally approve them?
Right.
Okay.
and we don't need to. I just thought it would be a good idea to add that structure to show that those two functions are a priority.
I guess, would it be appropriate to add things like the Student Advisory Health Committee to this list of, is the function of this list of committees something for us to be able to show to the public? These are committees that we have?
No, these are where individual members of the board are actually formally sitting on the committee.
I see.
Right.
So currently, there's no one on the calendar committee.
That's a
There is
brand
no,
new
yeah,
one.
there is no such thing as a calendar committee for this board right now. There is no such thing as none of these, we don't have any standing committees. This board does not. And this is an establishment of standing committees for the board.
So this would be basically piggybacking on, for the calendar committee at least, piggyback on what's already established for the calendar committee and formalizing representation of a board member on
Not
with that group.
not the
Not the
yearly school
district
calendar.
calendar.
The board calendar that
The
he's,
12-month board
This
calendar that
we're
we're
just
looking
talking
at.
about this one that we're looking
Okay,
at.
so we might
Yeah,
wanna
no, Mrs.
clarify.
Serrano thought she was getting ready to get some new people. No, we're not yet.
So can we clarify that there?
Yes, ma'am, my bad. So,
Totally missed that one.
yeah, no worries. Yeah, so the calendars committee is specifically focused on the 12-month
Board.
calendar of
I
the
see.
board.
Purpose.
So
I see.
board calendar committee.
Thank you.
Fair enough. Board calendar committee.
Mr. President, for what it's worth, I think all of this is doable and fits. And in fact, the board calendar helps me because I have more months to prepare for what the board is expecting in terms of a report or something.
And in that calendar committee, would that be an opportunity on a yearly basis to establish ideas like that are coming forth from the board that are not the routine items that might be the future workshops in future years? Is that the
Yes,
goal of that? Okay.
yes, ma'am.
I think it's a good idea.
So I was hoping to eliminate a lot of time in our board meetings, but it looks like this is gonna add a bunch of time, especially major briefing, update on culturally responsive committee, which that's probably a good thing. So just kind of looking at this, I mean, schools identified for additional support, no idea what that is.
Let me explain that to you. In our last, not the TAPR, but the academic report, we get our accountability report. We had two campuses that were, because of their grade, targeted by the state, or not targeted, but they were what's a better word than targeted?
Targeted is about right.
Okay, well, fine. Well, yeah, no, identified for additional support, right? And the whole point was to add, to increase the grade. And one was the Pace Center, which was a grade D, and the other one was Carlston Elementary, which was a grade C. And the whole point of asking for that briefing is not to point fingers and whatnot, right? But it's just to make sure that administration, the plan, and we actually had a little bit of a briefing on what that targeted support was going to be. And the point of this briefing is kind of a midstream, how is that implementation going? Are you running into any issues? Are you need any additional support, resources from the board, that type of thing? Because our basic job is to make sure that our schools are performing as well as they are, or as well as they can. And so that's what that piece is from, or for.
I think this calendar is fantastic. It's really nice to know what's coming up in 2 or 3 months from now.
Yeah.
We can start planning for it.
So Jeff, you had some other concerns about, what other concerns did you have?
The ones that we're already doing are perfectly fine with me, and adding additional committees is just formalizing these committees kind of makes it more permanent. I mean, the whole idea about some of these committees, I think, potentially are not necessarily to formalize them, and I think, like, specifically the Student Advisory Committee, I think that's what makes it so good, I mean, right now, we're in the infancy of that committee. We don't know what years to come are going to look like, So let's just say we formalize all these committees. How do we undo them?
The same way we're doing them.
We make a vote that
So then
says we
why
don't want to
would
do this anymore?
Yeah, I mean, it's
Not needed or adjusted or anything.
and committees on boards are not foreign. I mean, there are
All
a
over
ton
the
of school boards and other boards around here that utilize the committee structure to get work done. And the Student Advisory Committee and the Safety Security Committee don't add any additional work. It doesn't. The board's not going to dictate to you, Crystal, and
It's a
Mike
meeting.
how.
That's work.
Well,
Well,
you don't have to
you guys
volunteer
meet.
for that.
Your meeting is going to be when you
committee.
meet with the students.
Nothing's going to change. It's just
Nothing's
that
going to change. Yeah.
it's gonna
So
be formally recognized.
yeah. So you do plan to have future student advisory group meetings, right?
Planning on, yeah.
Yeah. So all we're saying is that you guys are the student advisory committee, and I think it sends an important message.
Mr. Board President,
Yes, sir.
I move that the Board of Trustees approve the board calendar for the 12-month period, March 2020 to February 2021 as presented, that the board establish the 4 proposed committees as presented.
And then that last thing is just I'm asking for interest. So
Is it on the calendar?
A second.
okay, there's a motion. Floyd, second. Carbone.
May I make one more comment?
Sure.
Potentially in addition.
Sure.
What I don't see on the board calendar, and I don't know that we want to schedule them in advance, or do we? I'm throwing it out there for consideration, is the town hall meetings that,
I saw the town halls on
did you
there.
see?
I had a
It's on there.
proposed. It's
It's
a
in March.
tentative
Did I-
date for March.
Spring Town Hall tentative.
Right.
March.
Now,
Cool.
granted,
okay, it says on the regular meeting, that's why I was,
yeah, okay, so that, I should have had that as a breakout item. And I can revise that.
I just assumed that wasn't because it wasn't physically scheduled yet, that you didn't have it over
Right.
there.
Well, I could have broken it out underneath those items so that it wouldn't have been associated with either a meeting or a workshop, but you get the idea that the tentative date was March 2020. And then the community needs to understand, and of course the board needs to understand, this is a guide.
Yep.
So we're gonna have to be flexible. And one of the things in the board evaluation was, if you have something that's scheduled and it doesn't get done in that month, it needs to get rescheduled to a future month. So the point is that things don't just drop and we don't
Drop
do
and
them.
you don't address them.
Right.
and is there a fall town?
I
hall
don't
that
think
we're
I had a
doing?
fall town hall.
But if we were a committee,
But it's-
if we were a
Right,
committee, we could
right,
change
right,
it and then present it.
Right.
Right.
All right, sounds good.
And
there's
members who are interested in, if you're not on either one of them, well, just let me know what you're interested in
Motion
doing.
first.
So we have the motion and the second from Floyd and Carbone. Any further discussion?
I just would ask, just for clarification.
Yes,
so,
sir.
without formally voting, you know, if we didn't put this on the agenda, are we still able to formalize committees? I mean, are we still able to create a committee?
The policy around committees, wait, I'm sorry, I don't think I understand your question. Would you say that one more time?
So for instance, the Student Advisory Committee.
Right.
That's already established and in place.
No, it's
That-
not.
It's not in place.
No,
So
we
they're
don't
not
have,
already meeting.
this board does not have any, okay,
Just informal.
yeah, it's an informal kind of ad hoc group, right? This board doesn't have any formal standing committees. And this would make 4 formal standing committees.
Okay. Could you still create the committees informally without voting on them?
Yes, the board president could establish committees.
Okay. And then my last question would be, when you brought this proposal, did you reach out to other districts to find out what committees they had?
I did a significant amount of research on what committees different districts have, and I'll give you a little bit of a flavor of that. There are several districts, Humble being one, that uses an audit committee, and there's another that uses a budget committee. However, I didn't feel that was appropriate for this group because the culture of our group is that we handle audit and budget in what we call the committee of the whole, right? So all of us sit down and have our input into the audit. Well, we hear the audit presentation, and then we hear the budget. So I didn't think those two were appropriate. And the student advisory and the safety and security are actually unique. The districts that I looked at did not have those, and neither did they have a advocacy or a calendar. But so these are fairly unique. They're not standard, but I think they fit to what our program of work is doing and what our vision is for our district. But yes, there was a significant amount of work that went into looking at other districts and what they do.
I don't know. I know a few of the districts, they don't have an advisory, a known advisory committee, you know.
Or
they may have a-
advocacy.
yeah,
Did you, student advisory
yeah,
committee,
or,
student advisory.
You know, I
yeah.
know they're all forming safety and security committees,
Mhm.
but they're all informal, but
Yeah.
as Charles, the president, said, these are not formal committees as opposed to informal committees.
These are formal as opposed to informal, right? So, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Motion carries, is that 7-0? Okay, motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Thank you all very much. All right. And in item 3 is the board president's proposal for changes to the regular board meeting timing and order of agenda. And I hope you all had a chance to review the documentation that was sent along with this item. This is another one, Sean, that I'll mention that I spent a significant amount of time researching. And I'll just run through the proposed changes to meeting document. I'll run through that. And one thing on our schedule is just reserving the 4th Tuesday in a month for workshops, right? And the workshops will be used for bigger items, longer items that need some things, kind of some kinks worked out before we bring it to the board meeting. We would request administration to explore broadcasting live the meeting minutes. We change our start time to 6:15, and we would list specific board goals that each agenda item supports and provide a brief summary of the impact. And that last item that's another thing that's related to a self-evaluation goal. So I was pretty detailed in the reasoning why. Just overall, I think my only concern here is good government, efficiency and transparency. And I'd open up the floor for any questions.
Charles, this is a
Yes, sir.
technical question.
Yes, sir.
I know that with HB3, there were some requirements for public comment. Does public comment have to be at the start of our meetings?
So with the way we've interpreted that, and I think that was Senate Bill something, or whatever it was, the way we've interpreted that is the public needs to have the opportunity to comment on a item prior to the board considering it.
Right.
And so that's why we do public comment at the very top.
So
of
we
the
could
meeting.
do board recognition first, hypothetically. I'm not saying that that's what we are doing,
Right,
but we could do
right.
that first and then before we actually vote on anything.
Right, and so board recognition wouldn't be, that's never a business item,
Okay.
right? That's just starting off the meeting with the, with the students, right? And one of the other things in here is kind of the flow of business, right? And taking board recognition and putting it at the top, that allows us to, like I said, start the meeting and focusing on our students, and then we move into public comment, and then we move into the business section, and so we flow through the business and we're done. And then the executive session, which would be a change to be at the end. Dr. Kelly did note that he's been involved in some executive sessions at the end of the day, and they tend to go a little bit longer, right, because there's no backstop. But that was not the point. I didn't want to, give the board carte blanche to just talk about stuff for like 2 hours at the end of the night. But I did want to remove that hard stop at 6:15 afterwards. So I'm not going to be dogmatic about it. I mean, if there's any changes, the board doesn't like it, the board wants to take pieces of it, I mean, I'm perfectly fine with whatever we come up with.
Mr. President, on that point you made right there about executive session, the reason I like it the way it is right now is partly because it does force us into a concentrated period of time for an hour. You still have the opportunity to come back to executive session at the end of the meeting as you're proposing, but you don't make that an everyday practice, because if you do, I've been in 2 districts where they've done that, and you end up having super long executive sessions at the end of the night, or people are too tired to make good decisions because it's already 9 o'clock at night.
Our work product does tend to decrease in quality the
Does.
later it gets. So that is a concern.
There might be a point in favor of this plan, because sometimes we're here at that time making votes. And so if we're not making the best decision at 9:30 and we're taking votes, it might be better to have executive session. We're not allowed to take votes.
Well, yeah, but you come out of it and
You
make.
still come out of
Sure,
it.
but either
We have to make a
either
vote
way,
in there.
you're making decisions that are
Right.
important.
Right.
And too many
Is there any
times
rule
we've
that-
been here at 9:30, starting at 5, which is a problem.
This is true.
That's my biggest problem with it. I'm neither here nor there on the location of executive committee. The problem I have is we had a 7-hour meeting last month, and there's just no need for that. We have a technical presentation every month now that goes on, it goes on and goes on. I mean, if anything, we need to shorten our meetings and pushing it back. My fear of pushing it back an hour and 15 minutes. Now we're getting into the 11 o'clock time frame, midnight. And man, I tell you what, I'm an early riser. I get up at 4 or 5 o'clock every day. And by the time 9 o'clock comes, I'm turning into a pumpkin. I'm not kidding you. So I'm not making good decisions anyway. So, by my, typical standards. So, changing the times are just, to me, I think we need to change the entire makeup of the meetings.
Okay.
Well, and I think you had, to Jeff's point, that last meeting, you had counselors here that had been probably at campuses since 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, and we're still here at the board meeting till
Well, that's
8 or
the
9
whole
o'clock.
staff,
Well,
everybody.
no, I understand. Is there anything, Dr. Kelly, and I think I might have asked Charles, that prohibits us from the public comment law from going into keeping executive session in the beginning?
Technically, if the board was to come out and make a decision based on what they'd heard in executive session, let's say we were hiring a principal, and there were a bunch of people that wanted to come and say, don't hire so-and-so, they could argue that you
Didn't listen to them.
you didn't have public comment before you came out and made the decision to hire the principal.
And that's an extremely
Right.
to the letter, very, interpretation of the public comment law. But
That's a problem of
Well-
the executive session being at the end of the day?
No,
No.
the beginning.
My thing is, I would rather, as Charles knows, I would like to not be cut off for exec session, but I would obviously like to see it, earlier than what we do it now, so that we're not coming here at 5 and So, you know, if we met at 5 and we had from 5 to 6 to do exec session, then went to recognition, then went to public comment, I'm okay with that, rather than moving it to the end. Because that still gives us an hour. And then if an hour is not enough in exec,
Then we can go back.
then we can always go back.
Which
But
is
I
what we
think
have now.
pushing it to the end of the meeting, you know, we'll push it late into the, I mean, if you get into another, you know, bond presentation or something that, you know, it's 9 o'clock and then you go into exec, you could possibly be here.
So, Sean, so you're saying,
Saying keep it at
so
5.
you're saying, okay, regardless of the time, start with executive session, open up, start whatever time it is, okay, it's just, right now it's 5, okay? Start at 5, go executive session, whenever that's done, go into public comment after that?
Or
Either
board recognition.
board
or- and
recognition, then public
Probably
comment.
board recognition and then public
Because you want
comment.
to get you want to get your recognition people. I mean, they're ready to go home at 6 o'clock. You know, they've gotten off work and I mean, I'm assuming coming here, but yeah, and then do your public comment, and that obviously solves the, you know, some of the complaints we've heard that public comment that we don't give people enough time to get here. Because I would actually probably push public comment back to 6:30 or 6:45.
It would,
which
yeah.
should be plenty of time. So I think you solve a lot of problems, but I would be for leaving exec session, you know, at 5 o'clock, and we have an hour to do exec session, and that way we're not here after.
But the vote,
Pending any issues.
Can I ask
with-
one question?
the vote
Sure.
though, the vote to
Yes, ma'am.
approve the superintendent's recommendation would have to wait until after public comment.
Right, and
employment
what
recommendation.
I would actually do is I would contact TASB, or actually, I'll take that back. I would ask, Mrs. Dawson to give us her opinion on if we have executive session before public comment, will that get us in any trouble?
But Charles, I'm pretty sure on this. Let me give you maybe another example.
Okay.
People hate the superintendent. You guys go in, you come back out, and you vote on my salary and contract. And then people get up at the microphone and say they hate the superintendent, and you've already acted on that.
Well, I
Well, we
I
can
don't
push the
think,
votes. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
you would push the votes to the after.
We can push the votes to after.
After.
Comment.
But I
Could
think
do
if you
that.
made a sheet, made a notation on the sign-up sheet asking what their public comment was in reference to, and we made a stipulation that if there was a comment in regards to something discussed in executive session, that we would reconvene into executive session to consider those comments before
could do that.
voting.
We have that information on those sheets. Individuals indicate whether or not they're talking about a
An agenda.
agenda item or non-agenda item.
Right. So what I'm saying is that we would make a star asterisk stipulation that if that comment is in regards to something that we discussed in executive session at the beginning of the meeting, that we would reconvene executive session before taking a vote on that item.
Yeah, and quite honestly.
Because I don't see
yeah.
it being a frequent occurrence that
Right.
something that
We-
like that would come up, but it would
Yeah.
allow us the loop, I mean, like a documented way of addressing those concerns should they arise.
Right, and it's a rare, I don't remember a time when we actually went in and talked about something outside of the superintendent's recommendations on hires, and that would have required us to come back out and actually have an open session part outside of a superintendent's contract. So it's probably something that's not going to happen very often that we're talking about, so.
But it gives us the coverage of
Right.
making sure we wait.
Right.
Can I ask
Sure, I'm sorry.
a question? Why? I mean, why are you proposing these changes?
I thought that I've heard from several places, and I'm just going to read through my whys that I put into the document, that public comment is 5 p.m. is early, right? And it's tough for folks to get off work. If you look at starting the meeting with the board recognition, I did think that was a good symbol of us putting our students first, but maybe that was just me. And the whole thing about the workshops, reserving the workshops on the fourth Tuesday would allow us to, things that are a little bit bigger that might need to be worked out in a different setting, we have that option. But everybody just holds that fourth Tuesday, but it's not a 100% we're gonna have that meeting. And of course, the asking about the board agenda, asking that each individual board item have a goal listed towards it is again something that we
No, that
talked
was
about
in our
from our
thing.
self-evaluation. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I'm actually, if Sean's comment of switching,
Bless you.
that actually kind of goes back to the way we used to do it. You start off with executive session, then you come back for public comment. Or excuse me, you start off with executive session, then we could go board recognition, then we could go public comment. That leaves us in the same place with the ability to get out in the 8 o'clock hour. Yeah,
We had
pretty
board
much.
recognition tonight, I mean, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this was a light night, you know.
Well, I know, but I'm saying, you know, you're still, your recognition
Yeah.
is gonna be right at the same time.
Yeah.
If you start at 5, go into executive session, you know?
Mhm. Okay, so pending any issues with, like, there shouldn't be any issues with the public comment law.
Well, based on what you
Right.
and
Yeah.
Crystal were saying, there's a way around it.
Yeah.
But, Charles, not to be too contrary, but I'd like to make a plea for the way it is right now, and here's some of the reasons why. First of all, I think you should make the effort to be here at 5. If your issue is so important that you need to speak directly to the board and bypass all of the other avenues that are available to you to speak to the board and the administration. But secondly, just to be blunt, public comment has turned into a pretty poisonous and negative thing for most months over the last year at least. And what I like about the present system is that happens from 5 to 5:30. Then you go into executive session. If somebody during public comments has made some accusation and the superintendent or others know about it, at least the board gets an initial briefing on that. Then when they come out of executive session, the poison is gone. The people that are sitting in the audience now are those who can't wait to see their kid recognized. And so you've put a buffer by having executive session between public comments and recognition. You've put a buffer that helps the rest of the meeting. And so that's why I like the way it is right now. I would like to see it stay.
I'll say this, I'm not opposed to changing the flow of things. I like the way we do it. I think Dr. Kelly's right on one of those points, and I like that. However, I mean, I can meet in the middle. I do like reserving the 4th Tuesday, okay? I like that idea for just a vision on it. And I can meet in the middle and start the board meeting at 5:30. I think going any later than that would be too late, but it would give people an extra 30 minutes to get the board comment. But, you know, I do like the fact that if somebody does say something about one of our employees or something, an accusation during your public comment, that we go in executive session and we can actually address that because we can't talk about staff during that time.
I think that public
Problem
comment.
is, you know, Lance, I mean,
I don't,
I mean, you're
am I
you're
wrong?
assuming that someone comes to every meeting to make a,
I understand it,
you know,
but I'm
complaint,
not
and,
changing
you know,
anything.
yeah.
Moving it 30 minutes back.
But,
is all.
but if you come in at 5, it gives you an hour for exec, and that doesn't, you know, even with the backstop at 6 o'clock, it doesn't, I mean.
That's a good one.
It,
Yes.
it gives us more time to discuss any things that, you know, we want to discuss.
You know, there's a lot of people in Pearland who work in Houston, and they work 9 to 5 jobs. And at 5 o'clock, if we say you have to be here by 5 o'clock, regardless if it's an important issue to them, they can't get off work. And then if they do, even at 5:30, they just sit through 45, 50 minutes of traffic to get back home, and then they come to the board and sign up. I think that the plan that Murphy has proposed is a good one, where you start with exec, you go to recognition, then public comment, and then you can always go back into exec if there's some pressing issue.
Yeah.
I just think it's really important that we move the public comment time back.
Can
And
you, could you, no, I guess my other question, and maybe, you know, this may be for Kim, I mean, would we have a problem, could we move board recognition up to 6, or do we feel like we
Well,
wouldn't get the?
No, I
Okay.
think Kim, in fact,
Okay.
Kim is shaking. No.
Yeah.
Yes. No.
I mean,
It's whatever.
well, no, but I'm thinking, Kim, and I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but
On a normal day, when is board recognition? I'm sorry.
6:15.
you've kind of said that the earlier it is, the harder parents are
Yeah, the
about.
earlier it is, it's kind of the same point. It's harder for parents to get home,
Okay.
pick up the kids, get them back. We actually used to have it at 6:15. We've now moved it to 6:30, I believe, so that they have that opportunity, you know. And, you know, tonight, like Mr. Gooden said, very light night. Next month is a very heavy month with a lot of kids coming, so.
And we would be opposed to public comment from 6 to 6:30 then?
Is
Well,
that what you're saying?
the idea would be that we.
Clear everyone, get 6:15, we have everyone gone. or we have all the people, allow all the people to go through recognition and be,
Yeah, and make
Yeah.
their exit, basically, because most of them don't stay for the meeting anyway.
Okay, so I want to try to, Mrs. Carbone, you had something, but yes, ma'am.
I fully respect your comments, Dr. Kelly, and your plea to kind of keep it the same. I think I've made it, we've had several conversations over time about my stance about moving public comments to a later date. I firmly believe in the increase opportunity for democracy. I do respect that the comments have been hard to hear and hard to swallow, and I was elected to take it on the chin, and so I'm okay with that. I feel like that's one of the responsibilities that I hold important, is to give people an opportunity to have their voice heard. And by making it at 5 o'clock, it's sometimes hard for me to get here, let alone citizens as a whole. So for whatever it's worth, that's where I stand on that issue.
Allow
So-
me to, yes, sir.
I
Go
want
ahead.
one more thing.
Sure.
So, since you mentioned Alvin on here, and they start at 7, which is a later time, I called one of my buddies over there, and what they do is the prior week, week 1 of the month, they have a 12 to 1 meeting. It's a 1-hour meeting, and it's a hard stop meeting to go over the next week's agenda, so that they hash out a lot of the items even before the meeting even starts, so that they can get out at 9. So
Yeah.
if you look at all their times that they, with all the bonds that they've done, with all the expansions, new schools, they're still getting out on at average on 9 o'clock at night. So I'm all in for eliminating or reducing the time we spend in this meeting. I'm perfectly fine with workshops and things of that sort in small doses, because I think in small doses we get a lot more work done in a more efficient manner. So maybe instead of the 4th week, the 1st week, and maybe we can go over the next week's agenda. And I don't know what kind of pressure that puts Dr. Kelly in, and trying to get, and you guys, about getting the agenda all set up and having it all ready to go a week prior to. But I know we get the agenda the Thursday before
Right.
a meeting right now, so.
And I didn't,
I've asked for that before, and we've talked about the difficulty in pushing the agenda up.
yeah, okay.
I think
Okay.
it will streamline the meeting, but
That, and
Okay.
just the fact that you're having now 2 days to prepare. Because even though we hash it out in an hour the week before,
what do you mean?
realistically,
only
I know
Hash it
us.
out.
Okay, so let me,
Only gives me more time.
Let me-
to
So
let
it's
me-
just one more
argument.
hour that we
No.
added on another week, and we'd still be back here doing the same thing.
let me try and put a bow on this. I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna take this input, and Sean, may I reach out to you over the next week and talk a little bit more about this?
Why not make a vote tonight? I mean, I feel like.
Because there's a lot of options in the air, and I think that Sean's
Seems like there's only 3 options.
Yeah.
Status quo, your
Okay.
plan, the MRF plan.
the MRF plan. Okay.
Okay, what was the MERP plan again?
The MRF plan is you start executive session at 5, and then you come out
At
after
6.
an hour or so, and you do
At 6,
board recognition,
Right.
and then you do public comment
following board recognition.
following board recognition.
And then if we have any issues with public comment, we go back
And
into
we go back.
executive session,
So
which would
the
rarely
MRF
happen.
The MRF plan is,
And I like the fact that we don't start, then leave, then come back again, so.
right. Okay. So are we, I actually didn't need a vote on the meeting, right? So if we're gonna go with the MRF plan, we can just go with the MRF plan.
You don't need a vote on that?
No need a vote, no.
It's already been deemed.
No, he sets the agenda.
Yeah.
Okay,
He
what
just
what
wanted
about
our
the
input.
4th? We're just gonna
There's
Fourth
only 3.
Tuesday,
agreeably?
fourth
say that-
Tuesday, we're gonna say yeah.
Agree that we're gonna keep that. at
Just
5,
hold on to
vote
that? Okay, no, I don't need to vote on that either.
Well, to me, if I understand what I hope is meant by the 4th Tuesday is the board will have the routine putting in their calendar that the 4th Tuesday they will try to not schedule against it. And then those months where we need that meeting,
Workshop.
you guys are already on board to hold it. We're not going to be trying to see if we can get a quorum.
Yeah.
But is anybody opposed
Only if
to a
there's
lunch?
only if there's a pressing
No, I'm
need
not opposed to
I don't want
it.
to spend a
Amen.
post
that we
Tuesday
have to
night.
come talk to you. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes.
Like when we start doing budgets, okay, we know that we're gonna be talking more about our budget.
Yeah,
And we,
Fourth
we,
Tuesday
we-
slotted for that.
right, I mean,
Yes,
right.
that's
No, actually,
exactly
we
what I
have-
mean.
We are not
Rebecca.
going to schedule a meeting just for the sake of having a meeting, correct, Charles?
Right.
That's what.
That's
Oh,
correct.
I'd like to,
yeah.
I mean, is it possible to see a daytime? I mean, I have, every Tuesday is taken. My fourth Tuesday is the only Tuesday that I mean, selfishly, but I mean, you know, what Jeff had mentioned, is it possible for us to meet over, I mean, it's an open meeting, but, you know, 11 to 1 or something during a working lunch, whatever. I mean, come and, you know, anything we want to workshop before the
A
meeting.
workshop?
I'm
Oh.
perfectly
We do
fine
it
with
here.
lunch. I'm
Yeah, 'cause
2
if it's
blocks
not
from here.
Not
Always
opposed.
scheduled that way? Oof.
I guess always scheduling something is a challenge, right? So, okay,
Or during the day? Yes.
let's,
What about the Thursday before 11 to 1 workshop? I mean, if you come the Thursday before the board meeting agenda comes out, then, I mean, you've pretty much given Dr. Kelly all the time he needs to get the agenda ready.
I like
You
that.
come from 11 to 1, and we hash out or talk in workshop, anything that needs to be workshop. By Tuesday, we're ready to go.
Yeah, instead of the week before.
Thursday,
Or full
if
week.
I understand what you're saying there, Sean, Thursday means, let's say we workshop and you guys put some stuff on the agenda, then I've got to get that on the agenda by the next morning?
No, we're
Oh.
workshopping what's
No.
already going to be on the agenda, so that when we come
Oh.
Tuesday, it's already been, the questions have been
I thought
answered.
that
So
the
instead of
workshop
doing it a
was the
week
idea of
prior, we'll do it
special
just
circumstances.
so
5
I,
days prior.
not, without trying to schedule specific workshops, I mean, because the
Right.
budget workshop is there, the budget workshop is usually done on a Tuesday, whatever day this is, a
But we're not,
Tuesday.
I don't think we're talking about that, right?
I'm talking about we're not trying to schedule, you know, specifics. And I'm also not trying to schedule an agenda prep meeting. That's what you're talking about, what they do in Alvin.
Yeah,
They also
no,
do
we're
it in
not doing that.
Houston. I'm not talking about a specific agenda prep meeting.
Then a work-
What
That
are
I
you
don't
gonna talk
know.
then a
about?
workshop can
I
be
mean,
called.
what's the point?
Anytime.
Yeah,
I
anytime.
mean, what do you want to just?
No, what I think what
arbitrarily
he's saying,
pick a
Jeff,
topic?
he's saying
No,
that
no, no. Okay, there are, okay, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got the MRF plan, right? Let's move back from the workshops, okay? And we can just schedule workshops as necessary. And what we're open to 11 to 1.
Yeah, I really
On
like
maybe.
11 to 1, and I also like just penciling it as
Tentative.
fourth Tuesday or whatever date you all come up with, so that Bobby doesn't have to work so hard to get a quorum. But, you know, if you say calendar every fourth Tuesday, that means we're not going to use it every time.
workshop
Right.
Tuesday or workshop
just-
Wednesday or whatever it is.
Workshop
Workshop
Tuesday.
Wednesday.
Okay. Fourth
WW
Tuesday?
right there, workshop Wednesday, done.
Wait, not
Master
Wednesday.
plan.
Not
Where
Wednesday.
Wednesday came
No, we're talking about Tuesdays, but this
I'm
is,
saying,
okay.
the fourth Wednesday. Workshop.
No, it's
I don't
not
know,
a
I'm just kidding.
Wednesday. It's the
No,
fourth
that's-
Tuesday from 11 to 1. Put it in your calendar. Miss Bobby, will you send us a calendar invite for those?
Or just put it on our board calendar like you have. It's so nice.
Fourth Tuesday, 11 to 1,
Tentative
potential
workshop.
workshops, tentative workshops.
Talk about
And we're going with the MRF
Larry
plan for
Berger
the meeting?
and his superhero status.
Okay, is there any interest in talking about broadcasting the meetings live?
No.
I don't know if it'll be worth
People don't.
Worth the cost?
the cost of putting
Okay.
it in.
Okay.
I mean, I watched a council meeting last night. There was 5 other viewers, so. I mean,
Yeah, there's several different opportunities to view it that way.
I like the idea behind it, though.
Yeah, yeah.
Is the
Thank you.
cost, I think there's grants out there that increase the availability to do it with low cost. If it was not cost prohibitive, like I think it would be right now, then I would
Absolutely.
pursue it, but I think the cost associated with it is too much at this point.
So next month, the MRF plan started?
The MRF plan starts next month. All right.
We don't have to vote on that?
You don't have to vote on that. We're just going to do it.
Repeat the MRF plan, Murph?
We will repeat it until it's
Do it in motion.
repealed.
Let's start with executive session.
All
So,
right.
That
so are we
could-
doing this penciling in when? March?
Yeah, fourth Tuesday, 11 to 1, pencil it in.
Hey, we have a different board meeting, right, in March because of spring break?
Of spring break. Is it the second? It's on the second?
17th.
17th.
It's on the 17th, the week after
It's the
spring break,
third.
right? It's
Yeah,
the third,
third.
yeah.
Because of spring break.
Yeah, everything. Why do we even put this on our?
Lunar calendar.
Okay. I think I have all the guidance on that. I appreciate you indulging that. Let's see.
Potential.
Okay, we'll move on from item 3. Like I said, we didn't need a vote on anything. The administrative reports for the purchasing cooperative fees and the bond financial update are in your, yes, sir, those are for your consumption at your leisure. Dr. Kelly, I'm showing that we are done with the agenda. Did you have anything else? Okay, with no further business to come before the board, we will stand adjourned at 7:51 p.m.